ladies and gentlemen, have you ever walked into a room and felt something shift? Not in the atmosphere, not in the lighting, but in your spirit, like an invisible wind brushing against your soul. That's not imagination. That's not emotion. That's presence. There's a reality more real than the skin you live in. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't demand attention, it changes lives. And today, you're going to discover if that presence is walking with you. Not based on how loud you pray, not based on how much you know, but based on 5 signs. If even one of them is active in your life, then what's happening to you is not coincidence. It's divine partnership. So lean in, because these 5 signs, they might just change the way you see your life. Forever, in the middle of storms, there's calm. Not because the storm is over, but because something inside of you is stronger than the chaos around you. You're not breaking down, you're holding steady. That's not normal, that's supernatural. You start to see people differently, not through eyes of offense, but eyes of compassion. You find yourself praying for those who hurt you. You forgive, not because you're weak, but because you've been given strength to love the unlovable. You can't settle anymore. Fluff doesn't satisfy. There's a craving in your soul for truth, for depth, for real encounters. This is no longer religion. This is relationship. You don't feel guilt, tripped, you feel drawn. You're not condemned, you're corrected with love. Mistakes don't push you away. They call you closer. That voice, it isn't accusing you. It's inviting you to grow. Doors open that you didn't knock on. Healing shows up when there was only pain. Provision comes when you had no plan B. And you just know this isn't luck. You're walking with someone who works beyond the natural. When something divine touches the ordinary, it doesn't just visit, it leaves evidence. This is one of the most profound truths about the spiritual life. You don't have to guess if the supernatural has brushed against your natural. You'll know not because someone told you, not because you read it in a book, but because something begins to shift inside of you, and everything around you starts to reflect that change. Presence leaves footprints. When that presence enters a room, things happen, hearts soften. Eyes fill with tears for no reason. Time seems to pause, and you realize you're standing in something sacred. But what's even more powerful is when that presence doesn't just visit a moment. It begins to dwell in a life, and when that happens, the evidence becomes deeply personal. It's no longer about what happened in a service or what someone else experienced. It becomes your story, your transformation, your undeniable truth. But here's the mystery: this evidence isn't always loud. It isn't always dramatic. It often arrives in whispers, not shouts, in stillness, not spectacle. People often look for thunder and lightning to prove something holy has entered the picture. But the real signature is often found in the subtle, quiet revolutions of the soul. You stop reacting the same way. You start loving people who once irritated you. Your patience stretches, your peace deepens, your hunger grows, and it all happens without a single spotlight. That's the proof. That's the evidence. You might not even realize it right away. Sometimes it takes someone else pointing it out. You've changed, they'll say. You're not the same person you were last year. And you'll smile, not because you planned it, but because something greater than you has been at work inside of you. That's how divine presence operates, not through force, but through transformation. Not through fear, but through love. It doesn't control you. It frees you to become the truest version of who you were meant to be. And let's be honest, life has a way of exhausting us. between the noise, the chaos, the disappointments, and the constant striving, it's easy to feel drained, empty, like you're running on fumes. But when this presence shows up, it begins to refill the parts of you that even rest and sleep couldn't restore. There's a supernatural recharge that happens, a refreshing that comes not from what's around you, but from who's within you. You begin to carry peace into situations where others are panicking. You carry stillness into chaos. And it's not because you've mastered calmness, it's because you're not carrying everything alone anymore. This is what it means when we say presence leaves evidence. It invades your reactions, your decisions, your desires. You begin to choose differently, not out of obligation, but from a place of new identity. Things that once tempted you lose their grip. Old wounds begin to heal. Pride gives way to humility. Fear is replaced by faith. You walk into the same situations, but you're not the same person. That's how you know something deeper is happening. And it's not just about you. That presence doesn't stop at the borders of your life. It begins to leak into the lives of those around you. People feel safer when they talk to you. They open up. They feel seen, heard, understood. Why? Because you're no longer operating just from your own strength or wisdom. There's something flowing through you. Compassion flows more freely. Patience is extended more generously. Love becomes your language, not just your concept. And none of it feels forced. That's how you know it's real. The evidence continues to multiply. You'll find yourself in moments of weakness, but instead of falling apart, you sense a strength that isn't your own. You face loss, but are somehow comforted in ways you can't explain. You get bad news, yet there's a peace that guards your heart. And when others expect you to snap, break down, or lash out, you respond with a grace that surprises even you. That's not because you've become superhuman. It's because you've become a vessel. So many are searching for signs of blessing, favor, divine approval. But the truest signs are not external. They're internal. The greatest evidence of divine presence isn't found in the flashy or the loud. It's found in the steady transformation of the heart, in the fruit that begins to grow where there was once only struggle, in the moments of surrender where you used to fight, in the quiet courage that rises up when you used to feel paralyzed. This is the kind of evidence that doesn't fade with time. It doesn't evaporate when emotions die down. It lingers, it deepens, and it becomes the foundation you begin to build your life upon. You no longer chase feelings, you follow the signs of real presence. You no longer crave the temporary, you hunger for the eternal. Because now you know, when divine presence is real, it always leaves evidence. And once you've tasted it, there's no going back. One of the clearest signs that something sacred is at work within a person is not found in their words, but in the way they begin to see others. When the divine begins to dwell within, the eyes of the heart change. The filter through which you view the world is no longer tinted by bitterness, judgment, or defensiveness. Something softer begins to take over. And perhaps most surprising of all, you begin to care deeply about people you once avoided. It's not a forced kindness. It's not politeness for the sake of image. It's a sincere shift that you didn't orchestrate on your own. One day you realize you're thinking about someone who once hurt you, and instead of anger rising up, there's a sudden ache for their healing. You don't want revenge anymore, you want restoration. You don't carry the weight of the grudge, you're praying for their peace. And that moment is sacred. That's not human effort. That's the touch of something holy inside of you. This transformation doesn't mean you lose your boundaries or become naive to toxic behavior. No, it's much deeper than that. It's about a shift from reacting to people based on your pain to responding from a place of love that you yourself have received. When love has truly taken root inside you, it doesn't just bless your life, it overflows into how you treat others, especially the ones who don't deserve it. That's the mystery of grace. It empowers you to love beyond logic. You find yourself extending patience where you used to snap. You offer silence where you used to argue, and you listen with a heart that wants to understand instead of needing to be right. And often, you'll catch yourself mid-conversation thinking, who is this version of me? Because you know the old you would have reacted differently. But now there's a stillness where there used to be tension, a compassion where there used to be coldness. That's the evidence of transformation, and this isn't something you fake. It's not something you rehearse. It flows. It comes out naturally because the source of love is no longer yourself. It's something greater operating through you. The weight of trying to muster up kindness on your own fades, because now it comes from a well that doesn't run dry. You're no longer fueled by performance, but by presence. And that presence teaches you how to love in ways you never thought you could. You begin to see people for who they are, not just what they've done. The masks they wear no longer distract you. You sense the fear behind their anger, the wounds behind their pride, the brokenness behind their behavior. And instead of labeling them, you lean in with compassion. You pray not for them to be removed from your life, but for their hearts to be healed. That shift is divine. That response is sacred. The people who once triggered you now stir something else. Not a reaction, but a reflection. A moment to ask, what would love look like here? You find yourself staying longer in conversations you would have walked away from. You forgive even when you're not asked. You bless people who never said thank you. Not because you're trying to be a saint, but because your heart has been reshaped by something stronger than ego love. And when love begins to rule, pride loses its throne. Suddenly, it's not about proving a point or winning a debate. It's about protecting the relationship, preserving peace, and letting your life become a reflection of the one who first loved you. The divine doesn't just want to be known, it wants to be shown. And the greatest evidence is how we treat people who are hard to love. You begin to carry a softness that confuses people. They can't understand how you can still be kind after what they did. They expect a reaction, and instead they encounter grace. And that grace leaves a mark. It causes people to question the harshness of the world they've gotten used to. When love becomes your default response, it becomes impossible to go unnoticed. People don't always know how to describe it, but they'll feel it. And maybe most powerful of all, this shift in love isn't just for strangers or enemies. It starts to touch the way you love those closest to you, family, friends, partners, children. The patience deepens. The words become gentler. The affection becomes freer. You learn to forgive faster, apologize sooner, and let go of things that once consumed you. Why? Because love has made your heart its home, and when it does, everything changes. So when you begin to love those you used to avoid, when you feel moved with compassion instead of resentment, don't dismiss it. That's no small thing. That's not just personal growth. That's divine evidence. That's sacred proof that something beyond you is alive within you, and it's only just beginning. There comes a moment in every journey when the surface no longer satisfies. The noise, the lights, the hype, the routines, it all starts to feel shallow. What once entertained now feels empty. What used to fill the space now echoes hollow. And you can't always explain it, but deep inside, something is stirring. A hunger that didn't come from you. A longing you didn't manufacture. It's not about boredom with life, it's about a divine invitation to something more. That's how it begins, not with fireworks, but with a gentle dissatisfaction, a sacred discomfort, the realization that you were not made to stay in shallow waters. You were made for depth, not just spiritual talk, but real connection. Not just knowledge, but intimacy. Not just church on Sundays, but the presence of the divine in every breath of your life. When this hunger awakens, it doesn't come with a manual. It comes with a pull. You find yourself searching not for information, but for encounter. You're done with rehearsed prayers and memorized answers. You crave the real, the raw, the holy. You don't want to hear about the fire, you want to feel its warmth. You want to be consumed, not just informed. You want truth that breaks chains, not just words that tickle the ears. You'll open your old journal and feel a spark again. You'll return to scriptures you've read 100 times and suddenly see something new. You'll listen to a song and weep, not because of the melody, but because of the spirit behind it. And you'll realize this hunger isn't a phase. It's the beginning of transformation. When your spirit hungers, it's because heaven is calling. This hunger will start changing your priorities. What used to be enough no longer satisfies. Casual conversations feel too small. Surface-level relationships feel too thin. You begin to crave depth in every part of your life. And that's not because you're becoming difficult or dramatic, it's because your soul has tasted something richer. Once you've glimpsed the deep, you can't settle for shallow again. It might even feel lonely at first, because while others are still content with the outer courts, you're being drawn to the holy place, and you don't always know how to explain it. How do you tell someone that your spirit is aching for something beyond words? That you feel a pull in your chest that won't let you rest in routines anymore, but that's okay. You don't need everyone to understand your hunger, you just need to follow it, and follow it you will. You'll start seeking moments of quiet instead of noise. You'll find joy in solitude, because it's there that the whispers get louder. You'll read less to check a box and more to hear a voice. You'll worship not just in crowds, but in silence, in your room, with tears, with honesty. And suddenly, it's no longer about performance. It's about presence. This hunger doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you humble, because the deeper you go, the more you realize how vast the ocean truly is. You stop trying to impress people and start longing to please the one who called you. You care less about being seen and more about being found by the presence that fills, heals, and transforms. Your discernment sharpens. You start noticing what grieves your spirit and what feeds it. You stop tolerating things that once entertained you, not out of legalism, but out of love. Because when you've tasted the real thing, anything counterfeit becomes obvious. And you don't walk in judgment, you walk in clarity. You're not above others. You're simply anchored in something deeper now, and the most beautiful part, this hunger doesn't deplete you, it renews you. The more you seek, the more you're filled. The more you're filled, the more you overflow. And soon you become someone others turn to not because you have all the answers, but because you've been with the one who does. You carry stillness, you carry depth, you carry presence. This is the mark of someone who's been touched by something divine. They're no longer impressed by shallow things. They're not easily distracted. Their spirit is fixed, their eyes are clear, their heart is set. They live from a place of pursuit, not performance. They don't hunger for applause, they hunger for alignment. So if you've felt that holy restlessness, if you've sensed that stirring that tells you there's more, don't ignore it. That's not frustration. That's invitation. It's the beginning of a deeper walk, a richer relationship, a life that no longer needs to chase meaning because it's already walking hand in hand with it. You were not made for the shallow end. You were created to swim in the depths, and when the deep calls to deep, your spirit will always answer. There's something incredibly intimate that begins to unfold when a person is being led by something greater than themselves. You notice it not just in the way they speak or live, but in the way they respond to their own shortcomings. It's one of the clearest indicators that something sacred is alive within them. Because the moment you begin to truly walk with the divine, your relationship with failure changes. Your relationship with your own weakness takes on a new shape. What used to feel like condemnation now becomes conviction, and the difference is everything. Condemnation is loud, it's harsh, it shouts accusations and reminds you of how far you've fallen. It leaves you stuck, ashamed, and afraid to try again. It tells you that your mistake is your identity and your failure is final. It doesn't leave room for redemption, only regret. That voice that replays every wrong move, every flaw, every time you should have done better. That's not holy, that's not love, that's a counterfeit. But when something divine is present, conviction takes the place of condemnation, and conviction feels different. It's gentle but firm. It doesn't beat you down, it calls you up. It doesn't define you by your error, it reminds you of who you really are. You hear a whisper, not a shout, and that whisper doesn't say, "You're worthless." It says, "You're more than this." Conviction doesn't drag you away in shame. It draws you closer in grace. You begin to recognize that the very presence you thought would leave you because you failed is the one reaching toward you with open arms, not to punish, but to purify, not to reject, but to restore. That realization alone can break you in the best way, because it reveals just how unconditional this love truly is. You begin to feel the weight of your choices, not because someone's pointing a finger at you, but because you've tasted something so pure, you don't want to do anything to distance yourself from it. It's not fear of judgment, it's love for the one who's walking with you. You don't run from correction, you welcome it, because it means you're still being shaped. You're still being loved. That's how you know the presence hasn't left you, because you're not numb. Your heart is still tender. You still care. You feel that pull when your attitude slips, when your words wound, when your priorities drift. That little nudge that says, "Come back. That's not who you are." And even though it stings, it also comforts. Because you know someone is still guiding you. You're not doing this alone. You stop hiding your mess. You stop pretending. You learn to bring your brokenness into the light, because you've discovered the light doesn't expose you to embarrass you, it heals you. You begin to see correction as care. Conviction becomes proof that you're seen, that you're loved too much to be left unchanged. You stop bracing for punishment and instead lean into the arms of the one who's inviting you to grow. And something beautiful begins to unfold in your daily life. You become more honest, not just with others, with yourself. You start to notice your patterns sooner. You apologize quicker. You don't defend your wrongs, you surrender them. Not out of guilt, but because you've tasted freedom and you don't want anything to come between you and that peace. The voice you now hear in your quiet moments doesn't call you a failure. It reminds you of your purpose. It says, "You fell, but you're still mine." That assurance changes everything. It gives you the courage to get up again, to keep walking, to keep trusting. You stop seeing your journey as one of perfection and start seeing it as a walk of transformation. You don't expect to never stumble, you expect to be picked up every time you do. This is where real growth begins. In the space between your mistake and your next decision, when you hear that still, small voice inviting you not to quit, but to lean in. That's where hearts are changed. That's where old habits die and new desires take root. That's where you stop trying to earn love and start living from it. And that love is what changes you slowly, steadily, from the inside out. Over time, you'll look back and realize just how far you've come. Not because you worked harder than everyone else, but because you stayed close. Because every time you strayed, something inside you pulled you back. Not with fear, with mercy. That mercy became your anchor. That voice became your compass. And that ongoing transformation became the truest sign of divine presence in your life. So if you're feeling conviction today, if something inside you is quietly saying, "There's better for you than this," don't run from it. That's not rejection. That's invitation. That's proof that you're still being pursued, still being shaped, still being loved by something far greater than your failures. Conviction doesn't come to hurt you. It comes to heal you, and the more you welcome it, the more you'll realize. The presence you're feeling is not leaving, it's leading. There is a quiet confidence that begins to bloom in the heart of someone who is truly walking with the divine. It's not loud, it's not showy, it's not self-assured in the way the world defines confidence. It's rooted in something deeper. It's a peace that doesn't need to explain itself, a stability that doesn't rely on circumstances, a sense of knowing not about everything in life, but about who walks with you through it. And this, more than anything, becomes a powerful sign that something sacred is near. This confidence doesn't come from achievement. It doesn't come from having all the answers or having everything go right. In fact, it often rises in the middle of chaos, when storms rage and the future looks uncertain. Something inside you remains still, not because the situation is easy, but because your trust has been placed somewhere unshakable. And that stillness, that anchored spirit, begins to show up in moments when you should be falling apart. You begin to notice it in your reactions. Where you once would have panicked, you breathe. Where you once would have lashed out, you wait. Not because you've become emotionally numb, but because something else has taken the seat of control in your life. It's not that you've stopped feeling, it's that fear has lost its grip. You still hear the voices of doubt, but they no longer drive you. You still face the unknown, but it no longer owns you. And that shift didn't come from within you, it came from the presence that now lives within you. This kind of confidence is not arrogance. It's not self-promotion. It's not about proving a point or defending your worth. It's quiet. It's humble. It doesn't need a spotlight to feel secure. In fact, it thrives in hidden places. It shows up in the way you carry yourself when no one is watching, in the decisions you make when no one's applause is guaranteed. It shows in the way you say no to things that don't align with your calling, even when they're popular. It reveals itself in the way you hold your head high, not because life is easy, but because your foundation is sure. This confidence makes you unshakable in trials, not immune to pain, but grounded through it. You don't deny the hurt, but you don't let it define you. You might cry, but you don't crumble. You might bend, but you don't break, because you've come to know that even in your lowest moments, you're not alone. That kind of assurance can't be taught. It has to be experienced. It's birthed in the fire, in the pressure, in the seasons where you had nothing left but trust. And when you trusted, you found something, or rather, someone holding you together. And as this trust deepens, your decisions begin to change. You're no longer rushed by pressure or manipulated by fear. You take your time, you listen more, you ask for guidance not out of anxiety, but because you truly believe that help is present. You don't rely solely on your own understanding anymore. You've come to know there's a better way, and even when that way doesn't make sense to others, you follow it, because peace becomes your compass, not popularity. That's how you know when you can walk away from things that used to define you: titles, approval, control, and still feel whole. When you can sit in silence without needing to prove anything. When you can surrender plans and trust timing. That's when you realize something holy has taken root. It's not a momentary feeling. It's a way of living, a deep and steady trust that the one who is leading you is faithful, even when the path is unclear. You stop striving to make things happen in your own strength. You learn to rest, not in passivity, but in assurance. You work, but you're not driven by fear of lack. You dream, but you're not crushed by delay. You move forward, but you're not anxious about what's next. That balance between peace and purpose, between patience and passion, it only comes when you're being led, not just driven. People will see the difference. They won't always be able to name it, but they'll feel it. They'll say you seem calm, strong, wise, and you'll know it's not you. It's not about having it all together. It's about being held together. That's the quiet power of being in step with something greater than yourself. You don't need to convince anyone your life will speak it on its own. And even when you mess up, even when the path feels confusing, that steady peace doesn't leave you. Because it was never based on perfection, it was based on presence. You know you're not abandoned. You know grace still flows. And you carry that awareness into every situation, every challenge, every opportunity. That's how you live, not shaken, but secure. So when you notice that you're walking with a peace that doesn't match your situation, when you feel strong without being hard and confident without being proud, when you face the future without fear, know this: it's not random, it's not luck, it's a sign, a beautiful, unmistakable sign that you are not walking alone. There is a transformation that begins to unfold within you that cannot be explained by human strength or willpower alone. It shows up in the way you begin to love differently, not because it's expected, not because it's rehearsed, but because something, or rather someone, is doing a deep work inside your heart. You don't always notice it right away, but others do. The people closest to you, those who see you on ordinary days and in unfiltered moments, begin to feel the shift. The way you speak changes. The way you react softens. The way you carry others' burdens expand. Love, real love, begins to overflow from a place you know didn't come from you. This love is not manufactured by trying harder. It is not rooted in personality or upbringing. It's not based on agreement, attraction, or affinity. In fact, it often defies logic. You begin to love people you once ignored. You begin to forgive people you once couldn't even think about without bitterness. You feel a pull to be patient in situations that used to push every button inside you. It's not natural. That's how you know it's supernatural. It's not coming from the surface of your being. It's rising from the depths, from a place that's being healed, restored, and constantly renewed. This kind of love is the clearest sign of divine presence. It is not loud. It doesn't demand credit. It's not interested in being noticed. It loves in secret. It serves without being asked. It gives even when it costs. And it doesn't discriminate. It pours out on the easy and the difficult, on the grateful and the thankless, on the ones who stay and the ones who leave. And you begin to notice that the old calculations, who deserves what, who earned your kindness, who gets your attention, they start falling away. Because love begins to reshape your lens. You don't just see people anymore. You see souls. You see pain behind the anger, fear beneath the pride, brokenness behind the cruelty. And instead of reacting with judgment, you start responding with grace. Not because you condone the wrong, but because you've known what it is to be wrong and still love. You've tasted mercy, and now you can't help but extend it. Love becomes your reflex, not just your resolution. You're no longer trying to be good, you're being transformed by goodness itself. The more time you spend in that divine presence, the more you begin to mirror it. You find yourself becoming more generous with your words, more careful with your tone, more thoughtful in your silence. You start to listen not just to reply, but to understand. You begin to carry peace into rooms without saying a word. And when conflict arises, you don't escalate it, you quiet it. Not because you're trying to win, but because you're trying to keep the atmosphere safe for healing to happen. This love also gives you courage, because real love doesn't avoid hard truths, it speaks them in grace. It doesn't shy away from boundaries, it honors them in wisdom. It confronts when necessary, but never to harm, always to heal. You begin to stop being a peacekeeper and become a peacemaker. Someone who is not afraid to walk into uncomfortable places with gentleness and strength. Someone who refuses to choose silence when love requires a voice. You'll begin to notice that you're drawn toward compassion instead of comparison. You stop measuring people's worth by what they do, what they wear, or what they offer you. You begin to see them through the lens of divine purpose. And when that happens, it changes everything: your friendships, your marriage, your parenting, your leadership, your influence. Love becomes the foundation, not just the decoration. And the most powerful thing about this love, it flows even when you're empty, because it's not something you're producing, it's something you're carrying. You'll go through seasons where you feel tired, discouraged, even heartbroken, and yet somehow you'll still find yourself loving well. You'll still show up. You'll still choose kindness. That's not your strength. That's the overflow of the presence within you. It's in those moments that you realize you are not the source, you are the vessel. You're being filled continually, so you can pour continually. You're not running on fumes, you're flowing from a well that never runs dry. And the more you abide in that place, the more natural it becomes to live this way. Not because you've mastered it, but because you're surrendered to it. You're not trying to love perfectly, you're letting perfect love move through you. Eventually, people will ask, what changed in you? They'll sense it. They'll feel safer around you, more seen, more known, and that's how you'll know the love that's flowing from your life is not ordinary. It's sacred. It's a signal, a quiet, undeniable mark of presence. Because you can imitate a lot of things, but you cannot fake this kind of love. It's too deep, too costly, too consistent. It doesn't come from trying, it comes from abiding. So if you find yourself loving differently, deeper, softer, stronger, don't dismiss it. Don't explain it away. Recognize it for what it is. A sign that something holy is alive in you. And that love is the greatest proof of all. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the noise fades, the applause stops, the distractions quiet down, and you're left with only one question: what truly satisfies me? And the answer to that question reveals everything. Because when something divine is actively shaping your life, your hunger starts to shift. What you crave changes. The things that once thrilled you begin to lose their shine. What once held your attention no longer holds your heart. You begin to desire something higher, something deeper, something eternal. You may not even notice it at first. It starts subtly. A show that used to entertain now feels empty. A conversation that once fed your ego now drains your spirit. An environment that once felt like comfort now feels like compromise. And suddenly, the things you once pursued begin to fall off your list, not because someone told you to let them go, but because they just don't fit you anymore. Your appetite is changing, and appetite is always a sign of life. When something holy is alive inside of you, it begins to influence what you seek, what you dream about, what you reach for. You're no longer chasing satisfaction in fleeting things, you're being drawn to what truly fills you. Your spirit begins to hunger for truth, for presence, for peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. You begin to long for moments that aren't loud or glamorous, but sacred and still. You find yourself desiring time in silence, space to pray, and a heart that's quiet enough to listen. That hunger isn't accidental, it's evidence. It's evidence that your soul has tasted something real, and once that happens, counterfeit fulfillment will never satisfy again. You may try to go back to what used to work, the relationships, the habits, the distractions, but they don't hit the same. They don't hold you like they used to. They don't numb you the way they once did. Because something in you knows now. Something in you remembers the presence you encountered, and once your soul has been fed by the eternal, the temporary no longer satisfies. And here's the beauty of it: this shift in desire isn't forced. It's not about rules. It's not about guilt. It's not about trying to be holy. It's about falling in love. Because when love touches your soul, your choices follow. When you know you've been seen and loved by something far greater than you can imagine, you naturally want to stay near it. You want to protect that connection. You want to nurture it. It becomes your treasure, your source, your reason. And suddenly, the things that used to entice you just start to fade away. Not because you're trying harder, but because you've found something better. And this hunger doesn't make you religious, it makes you real. You're not walking around trying to impress anyone. You're just living from a place of genuine desire. You want more of what brings peace. You want more of what makes you whole. You want more of what heals you from the inside out. You're not chasing applause anymore, you're chasing alignment. You're not looking for validation, you're looking for presence. And yes, this hunger comes with a cost, because not everyone will understand the change in you. Some will say you've become distant. Some will think you're too serious now. Some will wonder why you've lost interest in what the world celebrates. But you'll know it's not that you've lost anything. It's that you've finally found what matters. And when you find it, when you truly encounter the kind of peace that fills you completely, there's no turning back. This shift will impact everything: your time, your energy, your conversations. You'll start to protect your peace. You'll guard your heart more closely. You'll say no to things that drain you and yes to the things that draw you closer to that sacred center inside. You won't need permission to prioritize what feeds your soul. You'll do it quietly, faithfully, and the fruit will show. People will begin to notice something different about you, not because you preach, not because you quote scripture, but because you live differently. You carry peace, you radiate clarity, you don't move like everyone else. You're not desperate, you're not scattered, you're not constantly chasing. Because your soul is satisfied, and a satisfied soul is one of the most powerful witnesses in the world. And even in moments of weakness, because they will come, your hunger will pull you back. You might drift, but you won't stay lost. You might falter, but you'll feel the emptiness of it quickly. And that holy hunger will guide you home. That hunger is not a burden, it's a gift. It's the quiet whisper of presence reminding you there's more. Don't settle, come close. So if you feel your desires changing, if you feel your appetite for the world dimming and your hunger for the sacred growing stronger, don't resist it. Embrace it, lean into it. It's one of the most beautiful signs that something eternal is awakening within you. That hunger is not a coincidence, it's confirmation. You are being drawn not by guilt, but by love. And the one who stirs that hunger within you is also the one who promises to satisfy it completely. So, how many of those signs did you see in your life? Maybe one, maybe all five, but even if you didn't recognize any, here's the beautiful truth. You don't have to chase the signs. Just be willing to welcome the presence behind them. And once he enters, you'll never walk alone again.